Good evening. It's Joyful Hermit, and it's actually very late at night here. I'm having trouble sleeping. I had like an allergy or something, um, and I did read that uh, part of the something on my blood test could also be an allergy of some sort. It was not a good blood test signal or test, but um, I don't think that that's a problem with me. But I've been here tonight um, trying to talk things over with God, and I'd also worn a sweater that might have made me stuffy, but it was one that a daughter in law, a new daughter in law, my only daughter in law, knit for me about 3 years ago for Christmas. And I had it on today because 28 years ago today, my son, who she married in October, um, uh, had his first communion on the 22nd of November, 28 years ago. He was 12 years old. He's 40 now. It was a first marriage for him. I think a divorce affected him greatly, and he was extra careful. And finally, he found someone who he's been engaged with for a long time and younger, but I think they've known each other maybe 7 years now. So they're married, and I haven't met her. I've talked to her on the phone once or twice, but she had knit me a sweater, and I wore it today as what I call kinesthetic praying, as a prayer of thanksgiving for my son's having his first communion back when he was 12. The priest actually forgot. He was just going to give him communion when he came up in line with everyone else. But as it turned out, then, since the priest forgot, of course, we were like, oh, he was sitting with me. His sisters had gone off to college, um, and I tried to sort of look at the priest, and then the priest remembered. Oh my goodness! So at the very end of Mass, he called my son up special, made it special, and he had his first communion with a parish full, a congregation full of onlookers, and people to be happy for him. But he was loved Catholicism and was very good. Uh, Went to a Catholic high school, which he liked, and a Catholic university, which he likes still. But he lost his faith. He became upset his junior year when a friar, it was St. Bonaventure University, used a textbook that was a book written by a dissenting kind of priest who's now deceased. But a dissenting priest, I believe he was last at Notre Dame. And it got my son confused about what he'd been taught in high school and where he had trusted and appreciated his religion class and all, but and growing up from 12 on, what he had learned. But the book was written and was confused him and made him feel as if he had been lied to and he couldn't trust. And that, I believe, looking back, was because if we don't come, it would, no matter what church we're in, whatever church, whatever religion, if we don't get through the temporal aspects of whatever church it is into the spiritual depths, then the temporal will be always disappoint us because churches are made up of imperfect human beings. And it's us imperfect human beings who, over the centuries or however long the church has been, create traditions or different things or uh, church laws or rules, and even every church congregation differs, and the ministers the pastors, the priests, no, the rabbis. No one's perfect. And so if you are an idealistic person and think that what the church is built upon, like in Christianity, it's the Bible, is going to be um, upheld perfectly by people. No, but we have to get to the perfection of God in the church and the perfection of God in the scriptures. Get to the spiritual level. And then we understand that the temporal church is going to have flaws. And it's not that people are lying to you. There's going to be dissenters. There's going to be people who will disagree or want to change what the church is. Even though, like, that priest died, he didn't change anything, but he wrote the book, though, that caused a young man who was 21 to uh, even ended up turning against church in general and even God. He's become very skeptical, and so he married someone of that same faith, but he refused to have a wedding that his parents and that she would have liked. But as it ended up, he and his bride did enjoy their wedding, but I wasn't invited to it because of misunderstanding. He's fallen away from me also. And so I wore that sweater as a prayer today, thanking God for his first communion and for his years of wonderful faith and being a wonderful churchgoer and very enthused about theology and about God. And also, though, I praised God for his wedding, for his being married and their lives, and for what a lovely woman he married who knit that sweater for me as a present 3 years ago. So um, keep the faith in that regard, keep the faith, and keep praying. Love, pray, forgive, but keep living our lives then. If we have those who decide to leave us, cut us off, do not want to communicate anymore. So that was one thing that I was thinking about today. I did take the sweater off just in case somehow that was causing, but I've had this stuffiness before a couple of nights ago, so it might be dust in here because I haven't been well enough to use my shop vac to sweep up dust. Or they're golden doodles and they don't shed per se, but she somehow, the top of her back wasn't as curly. So there's little uh, Mercy tufts of hair around. So I need to, maybe tomorrow I'll be able to get up if I'm not too nauseated and do some vacuuming. Get a mask on and vacuum. But the other thing I've been doing tonight was, since I tried to eat a little bit ago, maybe an hour and a half ago, because I'm trying to eat just a little bit, like a half a cup or 2/3 of a cup. This was a half a cup, about every 4 hours, to see how long it takes for things to get through my out of my stomach. Because I realized that's the problem, I think, with this indigestion or terrible nausea attacks, terrible. Um, and why then when I eat something when my stomach is empty, like in the morning, it seems okay, but then a couple of hours later, if I try to drink tea with protein drink in it or something, I get a nausea attack. So I'm thinking that the arachnoiditis has started to go into the phase that it will go into, and it does. The longer you have arachnoiditis, it will paralyze your digestive tract and your bladder, and then also your limbs, your lower legs, your lower torso and down. So, and I had been warding that off by being active. Got stuck into a house that needed remodeling on an island. Didn't realize it, but I had to learn all that and work myself out of it. And I love doing it. And it did strengthen me. I didn't realize till I got here, though, that I needed a very serious spine surgery and also that I had arachnoiditis. So I'd already gotten this place. And when I got through that surgery, I always think positively, keep with your vision. So I started doing painting and then tore out one wall between a kitchen and a dining room and um, have been, um, I have the bathroom gutted, but then I've had 4 surgeries, but I gutted the bathroom last fall, not knowing I would need the knee replacement because the knee was hanging in there. It wasn't so bad, but then I also didn't know I didn't have a thyroid working. So I was really exhausted, fatigued last year and in bed quite a bit. Got the thyroid medicine when I realized in spring that I didn't have a thyroid working and had 2 months to build up, so I gardened, building up for the knee replacement. Well, thought in 3 months I'll be back to doing my manual labor with a good knee, but my knee replacement failed. So, and that meant it was extra pain than a normal knee replacement. To have it fail was extra pain. So I didn't, though, also realize, although I felt a shift in me, maybe in the first or second, it must have been the second week, because the neighbor woman who had come over to start helping me, and I paid her, but she didn't want money at first, but I insisted, and she deserved it, and she realized that it was only right to take it, because if she had been in my position, she would have insisted on paying someone. So that worked out beautifully. And she came over, and I remember telling her something has shifted in me. Something's different. And while I want to get up and have, I couldn't. It was like I didn't have the energy. So the pain doctor last week put me on Adderall, which is given for chronic pain people who have chronic fatigue to help give them energy. And I was having this nausea stuff starting up again for probably 2, 3 months now, off and on, but it started up in earnest more. But I had 2 days that I was able to go to physical therapy, and at night I learned pickleball in a little beginner lesson one night, and the next night, the day after a nausea spell, I was okay that day and could go and play with some other beginners. The next day was a week ago Friday, this coming Friday. I've been laid out ever since with terrible nausea attacks. So I don't know, and I up until that time, I could get up, but I would always be depleted and end up back in bed. That's why I asked finally for something that would help give me energy. At first, he was going to do an antidepressant, but we realized I'm not depressed. There's just something that no impetus, no, none of that inner spark that gets us up and keeps us going, even though a person may want to. And I would set goals of what I would do. But the pickleball sounded fun, and I thought, good, that gave me a boost of something fun to try, something new to learn. But I can't do it. Pain and then these nausea attacks. So I had stopped the other night, or when was it? Maybe it was this afternoon. Whenever Lovey my dog had hit the keyboard and stopped my sharing the other night, I stopped at this one point from a journal that I'd written in years ago. And so I'm going to read this because this is where I stopped, the last thing that I was going to share in the previous 2 videos before. This is something that I was thinking and had written in my journal. It wasn't a locution and it wasn't a vision, but it was thoughts that I had that I believe that thoughts come from God or the Holy Spirit or our angel or something. So um, I give all credit to God because God created us and He created our minds and our wills and our emotions. And so I consider that God is the one with the thoughts. And so these were thoughts that I'd had about 32 years ago or 33 years ago. I was sort of talking with God back then. All the times I've given myself to God or offered my body and pain to Him has given God a chuckle, no doubt. For what I give to God has always been His to begin with. Even my willingness to give over to God's will is His gentle teaching and grace. So, I tonight have not been able to sleep because I tried eating a little bit again and it started to flare up the nausea. Not terribly because I just laid here and I got this water with a little bit of ginger in it, hot water. But, and I can't take more Zofran. I'd already taken 2, which is the most you can take, 8 milligrams. And in another 12 hours, I could take 8 more. So that would be now in about 6 hours, I could take more. But I'm not able to sleep because I've got my um, digestive issue, my nausea coming up, and just don't feel good enough to sleep. So I've started thinking through of after I read this little reminder from 32 or 33 years ago. At the time, I was thinking of giving myself over to God, and realized no, it's really I belong to God already. All I have to do is I'm already God's. But I've been giving myself to God tonight anyway, because I think God enjoys hearing from us. So I've given over to Him. If this is it, if this is the phase of the arachnoiditis in which I'm not going to be able to get up and build up again and continue my manual labor in here and my gardening and yard upkeep, if this is the time that my intestines, my intestines and my stomach are going to shut down, where the arachnoiditis is the nerve signals from my lumbar and the clump nerves back there, the arachnoiditis signals are shutting down and paralyzing my abdomen, then I accept that, obviously. And I told him, I praise you, I thank you for whatever you have in mind for me with this. If it is that tomorrow I'm able to get up and try to eat little bits every 6 hours or smaller amounts every 4 hours, I will do that. And if I have my will with God's will, in other words, I've been talking it over with them. And I've been thinking through about this sharing with you. If you don't realize this about hermits, is that when it comes to toward the end of their life, a hermit has to deal with that. And it isn't, we may not have someone to take care of us. If you're not in a religious order hermit, and you're not called back to the monastery or the convent to their infirmary where they're taking care of you because you belong to that order. I don't. I'm not a religious order, a hermit. I'm a consecrated hermit, but privately professed, and I follow after the ancient hermits who were historic and traditional types. I think about the Desert Fathers. When it came for their time to become ill, they were in their huts, maybe some other desert hermits around, or in the forest or caves, were aware and might help the person in their final sickness and death. Or if they were handicapped, would bring them something. Um, and then would bury them out in the desert or out in the forest or up amongst the caves or however, the way was then. But I thought that's more how I would want to go if God would will that I would just pass away in here alone. And then, obviously we have different laws now regarding deaths and everything. I would have to be, a coroner would come, declare me deceased, and I'd be hauled off to a funeral home where my final arrangements would be made and or followed through with. And I think I'll probably have ashes and have them flown back to the cemetery, and I'd be buried beside my dad. My mother's there, my dad, and then there's other sites that my grandfather had bought. So I would be there with my aunts and uncles and my grandparents and my parents. Um, so that's all taken care of. But I don't know what God has in mind with this nausea that keeps going. And this is the first time ever that I've been ill or had extended pain, but never 5 months. It's been 5 months since the knee surgery. And I would always get over it. Even my major spine surgery um, in 2019, it was a year recovery. I was able gradually to get up and be up longer and longer and longer and stay up. But I didn't have this nausea situation. So this has been 6 days now that I've had the nausea. And it has taught me what cancer patients go through with their chemotherapy. So I have great empathy and understanding of that. And today I realized that the Zofran wasn't working because I need two. And two is definitely cancer patient level, where you take two and you can do that. Then the next 12 hours you can take two, and then 12 hours later two. Then you're supposed to break for a while and get back to 8 every 6 hours, and then you can do 12 again. And I'm sure if it even gets worse for a cancer patient, and hospice comes in and they put have um, a tube in you, IV, like the 2 times I've been in the ER the last 2 nights or evenings and afternoons, they would put an IV in and gave me Zofran in a concentrate that was very, very strong. Boy, that knocked the nausea right out. And I was good until this morning after I ate a little breakfast and then tried to eat a couple hours later. So I've been talking through with God, even myself at first. Am I ready? If this is the phase of arachnoiditis where God is not letting me come up from that back from the knee surgery, not letting me get enough energy up and enough strength or ability to eat enough now to where I'm going to be in the bedridden phase of arachnoiditis. And I had to get myself to the point where, yeah, that will be okay. God will do what he wants, but God wants to hear from us. We think it through, we talk it over with him. Yeah, that's okay. Things are a mess here. I don't have money to hire someone or to go to a nursing facility. That was part of what finishing the house and selling it was going to be. But if that isn't the way it's going to be, I think my neighbor would come over if it's just coming over a few times a day or a couple of times a day or bringing me something to eat if I can eat. If I can't get to where I can eat better and more, then that will be more serious. And you can go on quite a while on just water or little bits of food, but after a while, your body can't sustain unless it's something mystical. And that's called anedia. Inedia, Anedia. And that is when God chooses with certain souls that they exist on the host or exist on nothing but God. Um, and because I'm sure that some of the desert fathers who didn't get a consecrated host, they lived out in solitude in the 3rd century, 4th century, etc., 2nd century, um, who possibly had an Edia, they were so subsumed into God that they required no food or very little. Catherine of Siena was one. Padre Pio is a recent one. He died in 1968. He did, I think he had an ale and some bread at lunch, but otherwise he never needed to eat. And he had a paunch to him. He was a not a skinny friar. And he also had the stigmata and bled a cup a day of blood. So he was a mystical anomaly. He was touched by God with the stigmata and also didn't need to eat much food at all and was just fine and didn't gain weight, didn't lose weight. He was A-OK, healthy. I think one time he had to have a what are they called? Hernia. He had to have a hernia surgery. And this would have been back maybe in the 1930s or so. And right there in Italy, San Giovanni Rotondo, he was in that monastery. And they did the operation on a table. He refused anesthetic because he had been ordered not to let anyone examine his stigmata. His spiritual director, or maybe it was the Pope or somebody up high, had said he was not to allow anyone to examine his stigmata. And he knew the surgeon who was going to do the surgery, and Padre Pio could read souls. And he knew the surgeon was just chomping at the scalpel for Padre Pio to be put under so he could examine this unusual phenomenon of stigmata. Well, Padre Pio refused anesthetic, but it was so painful, he ended up collapsing, of just losing consciousness from the pain. And the doctor did get to examine it. And as God willed, the doctor said, yes, this is miraculous. He isn't doing anything to prolong these wounds or the bleeding. So uh, anyway, that was Padre Pio, and he was a total mystical person himself. But I'm not. So I still eat. My body requires food, I'm assuming. And this would just be a way that I would decline if God wills. If I can get on top of this nausea, and I am going to hopefully uh, go see the pain doctor again next Wednesday. He had an opening to try. Maybe we need to increase the pain meds. Maybe it is radiating from my back enough, or I have so much pain that the nausea is caused by that. But it's reminding me more of what happened a year ago, where my intestines started to shut down then. And I got lovey because little Mercy was so sweet, she wouldn't force me up in the morning. And I'd lost my ability of mind over matter, of over pain, to force myself up. So I needed a dog to get me up, to make me get up out of bed many times a day, even if I was having a pain siege. I would be forced to take the dog out and back in, feed the dog, all that. So, and Mercy was getting very lonely when I would have pain sieges, and I couldn't play with her. I would be too ill. I'd be in bed with pain, not nausea then, but pain. And so Lovey comes, and he's her brother, her biological brother, but a different litter. And he got huge. But and because he is big, he's more rambunctious, and you've heard him carry on. He does not let you stay in bed long. So when I finally did get to the gastroenterologist to have tests done, my intestines had turned back around. So I do think if I could get up and get moving, I could get on top of this situation and get built up muscle and stamina and get back to my manual labor. But I can't seem to get on top of this nausea. So this may be my entrance into the phase of arachnoiditis where your organs, the intestines shut down, and then the bladder does also. And then if your legs go, then you're pretty much bedridden. And so I've had to think about that and what it would entail, and and am okay with it. I'm okay if that's what it's going to be. I know I trust in Jesus. I know things will work out. God will provide. And if it gets really bad, and or if I can eat but have to have a colostomy or whatever, all that will happen. Then maybe I could still get up. But something's going on with my inability, my lack of impetus. I felt a shift the second week of my after my knee replacement, that something had shifted in my body, that and it's made it very difficult for me to get up and stay up. Either the pain or the nausea always has me get back in bed because this is where I'm comfortable, and my mind has lost that mind over matter ability in that regard also, of being able to stay up and withstand pain and to focus. So that's why the pain doctor also gave me the Adderall to try that too, because that's for people with uh, chronic fatigue to get them energy. So um, I had read this last writing from my journal, and I'm giving myself again over to God. It's a good thing to do in our different phases of life, or even when we're not thinking we're entering in a new phase, is to always remind ourselves that we already belong to God, but He likes it if we are in agreement. And if we say, take me, yes. And I'm not meaning take me, I'm dead, or I don't think I'm dead or dying right now. But no, take me, I'm yours. Do with me as you will. I'm giving myself to you, God. I'm giving myself over to you for whatever you want. That I know something's going on here that isn't my usual. I'm usually get up and get going again. And somehow I haven't been able to. This after this surgery 5 months ago. It's a long time now. I should have long since been able to be up and be around doing things. And but the nausea has affected it, and the lack of impetus. So I gave myself back to God, knowing He's already got me, and we'll just see what happens. And I praise God for all this that's happening, because God moves us in a trajectory. Um, One time I asked God, what does the soul look like? I was praying for that, and I had this dream at night of these little cone-shaped rubber things, and they were all going from all over the universe, going into this center source of light, just all coming in, and they were just moving slowly at the same speed, but they were all in different places. They weren't all right beside each other. They were all in different places, all up and down and around, going very slowly. And as they would go, these cones, the wider part of the cone was out here. The cones would involute. They would just constantly be going inside out, inside out, inside out, as they would move along with their cone would always be pointing forward after they would involute toward the source of light, just practically floating. But I could tell we were traveling at a fast rate of speed, and just suspended and that's that he want I wanted to see what the soul looked like. That was what I was shown, and how the soul operates. It's always moving toward God, toward light, toward the source. And we are always involuting. We are always learning, always changing, and but yet always going in the same direction, effortlessly, being drawn by that light even. So I'll end with that. Gave myself to God yet again for whatever. I praise God for whatever is happening or will happen. Or if he's going to lift this somehow, or I need more pain medication, which I don't think is the case, but then I will, whatever God needs and wants, and it'll work out. And maybe the neighbor will help me for a while. Maybe one of my adult children, not the one who's cut off more, he doesn't have room anyway where he lives. He couldn't, there wouldn't be room. But one of the others, maybe not. I think eventually, well, if I can't eat, it would go faster, but God will work it out. I would sell this place as is, get very little, but maybe enough to get through a little time in a care facility, a very inexpensive one. Maybe there'd be, I have a friend back in my home state who always had said, you can come live with me. I don't know if she'd be able to take care of someone, but maybe someone back there would help her. I know people back there. So we'll just wait and see what. But I knew it was time to do a more formal giving of myself, so I did that. Just spoke out loud, and God bless His real presence in us, and let us keep practicing, loving to learn to love. Like I had to practice a little bit last night with the ER doctor. had to do a little more intentional loving as God loved. So it happens. We're human. We're imperfect. God bless His real presence in us, and let us keep loving as God loves.